You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. The Supreme Court of the United States, since the last time we were on the air, issued a big slapdown, a smackdown of sorts, a stuffing of the Washington Generals up against the Harlem Globetrotters style smackdown to the three-judge panel of the Western District of Texas. You may recall there was a lot of gloating last week over this judicial panel making the claim that Texas was not allowed to use its redistricting map they had put forward for 2026. And they said it was really not honoring to the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act. The Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act are directly in opposition to each other, which is why the Supreme Court is hearing a case on that at the moment. But this judicial panel, 2-1, said, you have to design your districts racially right now, Texas. None of that treating people the same no matter their color. Well, the Supreme Court of the United States has now issued a stay of that stay. They have blocked that block. They have injunctified that injunction. Quote, it is ordered that the November 18th order of the United States District Court is hereby administratively stayed. Bless you. Stayed pending further order of the undersigned or of the court. It is further ordered that a response to the application be filed before Monday, November 24th by 5 p.m. And it was. So everyone is appealing things left and right because right now the Supreme Court of the United States is getting ready to smack down racial districting. Now, this matters for a couple of reasons. Number one, it means that it is more likely that the Gavin Newsom redistricting plan that they put forward on the ballot in California is going to be slapped down because California and Texas essentially ran their redistricting processes the same way. So that's one of the reasons why the Supreme Court manner here on gerrymandered based on race style voting and districting matters so much. We'll get to that a little bit later. We actually have our Olivia Perro to discuss Prop 50 and that stuff, again, a little bit further into the future. But in the meantime, I want to talk about the other catch of it. Jasmine Crockett is getting closer to a Senate run. We expect her to announce her Senate run on December 8th or around there. That's what those in her possible exploratory campaign are saying. And that brings us over to the judge today, the Clinton-appointed U.S. District Judge Cameron McGowan Curry, dismissing the cases against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. She alleged that the U.S. interim attorney, Lindsay Halligan, who had secured the indictments was, quote, unlawfully appointed to the role. Okay. Everyone took to social media because that's what everyone does these days. Now, I'm going to level with you. If you are out there and you're a politico that watches the Tony Kinnett Cast, pump the brakes whenever you see some type of a judicial ruling, whenever you hear some type of an attorney posting, whether it's the Department of Justice via the Attorney General's office, or whether it's the Rapid Response 47 crew, or you're on the left, the right, whatever. Take a breather. Because if you get out there and start making claims about the judge's statements before you have even looked at not just the judge's statement itself, but also the laws that matter in a situation, you might get pranked. You might get punked. Because as much as we would like to claim that some things are just very black and white, set in stone, presto, hesto, like maybe a mortgage or a bank fraud case, yeah, it turns out that when judges script out random injunctions and throw out particular cases, there might be a little more to it. So in the James Comey lying to Congress case, it's a minor charge, but it is still a felony because you're not allowed to go under oath and lie to Congress. That is a no-no. And if that action doesn't have teeth, then you never have to tell the truth to Congress whatsoever. In fact, you might as well be lying so much you could run for Congress. But I digress. Lindsay Halligan was appointed as the interim U.S. attorney by the Trump administration. This forewent the Senate confirmation process by allowing her a 120-day term. She was lawfully appointed to the role. Now, why do I say she was lawfully appointed to the role? Because the judge in this case makes the argument that this interim U.S. attorney, Lindsay Halligan, was unlawfully appointed to the role. She's only supposed to serve for 120 days. And that's where we get into the weeds. Believe it or not, that is in fact where we get into the weeds. Because if there is a series of indictment filings that are in process when her 120-day term of appointment expires, does that mean that everything that her office was working on fades into the mist like Thanos snapped his fingers? No, because there are several cases of legal precedent over the last 25 years that show several interim U.S. attorneys around the country on that 120-day period whose lawsuits and cases went along on through. It's also worth noting here that James Comey's lawyers have tried every single way other than jumping the turnstile in the New York subway to get James Comey off of the books here. Said it was a political indictment, then said that Halligan didn't present the series of indicting documents over to the grand jury properly. Then it turned out actually she did. Then they tried to suggest that, well, actually someone didn't dot the I's and use the right legal style guide, as if the issue was they weren't using the APA style or Chicago or Turabian correctly, which is ridiculous. This is the latest effort. Now, we'll get to Letitia James in a second here, because the reason that people are talking about this particular instance, James Comey thinks he's off the hook. He thinks that because his case has been thrown out, well, hey, the statute of limitations was up. They got right in under the wire initially. So now that the case has been thrown out, after all, the judge threw it out without prejudice, which means it could be retried. But hey, the statute of limitations is up. 5 years have passed. Comey's off the hook, right? Well, Comey certainly thinks so. Here you go.
I'm grateful that the court ended the case against me, which was a prosecution based on malevolence and incompetence.
Based on incompetence. You made the choice to lie to Congress. If you want to say it's malevolent, that the prosecution was targeted, okay, sure, it was in fact a targeted prosecution. Most prosecutions are in fact targeted at the DOJ level because people have to tell the Attorney General's office, hey, there's some shenanigans going on here. But alas, I'll let Comey continue. He's so giddy if he had any Botox in his face to make more than half a smile.
And a reflection of what the Department of Justice has become under Donald Trump, which is heartbreaking. But I was also inspired by the example of the career people who refused to be part of this travesty.
Okay, he does realize that most of the people in the Department of Justice are career people, right? So either the Department of Justice is wholly corrupt, or it has a lot of the career people that you're praising. I'm sorry, parsing James Comey's rhetoric here is like herding cats. It's lost before you even try it. You know, it's like playing Guess Who with Helen Keller. Not going to go very well. We'll let him continue.
It cost some of them their jobs, which is painful, but it preserved their integrity, which is beyond price. And I know they will serve again. I was very lucky that some of the best lawyers in America stepped forward to represent me. I hope they serve as an example to more and more lawyers, especially at some of the big firms.
Okay, so a little fun fact here is he walks around and says, oh, I'm scot-free. It's amazing. It's wonderful. I'm the best. Yeah, not as easy as that, I'm afraid. And here's why. The Comey situation regarding the original indictment that was filed against Comey, according to 18 U.S. Code, subsection 3288 on indictments and the information dismissed after periods of limitations. And just in case you're curious here, for those on the live stream or TV side of things, boom, there's the U.S. Code on screen. Whenever an indictment or information charging a felony is dismissed for any reason after the period prescribed by the applicable statute of limitations has expired, a new indictment may be returned in the appropriate jurisdiction within 6 calendar months of the date. So even before we get to the series of appeals that are likely to go forward, which I'll play Attorney General Pam Bondi, I'll play White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt, before we even get to those approvals, because the prosecutor began her term correctly, say, well, the final signature wasn't on the indictment when she was at the end of her 120-day limit. That is not a legal precedent here, which is guaranteed. And appeals courts have, in the last 10 to 15 years, in more corporate lawsuits, for example, have overturned some of those tossing out of the documents. For example, there are cases around the country, before we send the radio crew over to commercial here, in which people have run out the clock on let's say, defamation statutes of limitations because they weren't served correctly. Well, a court at a state or federal level can essentially ignore that if they say, well, the court was trying to uphold the rule of law. So unless you can make the case effectively and confirm it, that Trump appointed Lindsay Halligan with the sole objective of going after Comey and Letitia James, there's no way this sticks. Radio crew will send you to the commercial. We have more on this on the live stream. I recommend that be the place you watch it. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal. Now, over on the live stream, because we don't have to send you to radio commercial, here's why some of this stuff gets a little bit extra sticky. Right now, the appeals courts in the United States have, let's say, more of a likelihood of siding with the Trump administration, not the least of which includes rationale against judges which have been appointed by a left-wing administration or have been confirmed by Democrats in the Senate and then have been bragged about, for example, by Chuck Schumer. We have played that audio clip on the show quite a bit, where he brags about federal judges only throwing things out or issuing injunctions because the Trump administration is in power and he wants to stop them however he can. Now, here's Attorney General Pam Bondi. She landed in Tennessee this evening. Actually, it was Matthew Foley over from the Washington Reporter who got this clip over to us. Check it out.
If I could just get your reaction to the James Comey, Letitia James cases being dropped today. Back in Washington, James Comey put out a video. He said this matters most because a message has to be sent. The President of the United States could not use the Department of Justice to target his political enemies. Your reaction to the cases being dropped into that specific message?
Sure, we'll be taking all available legal action, including an immediate appeal to hold Letitia James and James Comey accountable.
Note the order of the prosecuted in Pam Bondi's statement
For their unlawful conduct.
What is your reaction to his statement?
I'm going to keep going on this. I'm not worried about someone who has been charged with a very serious crime. His alleged actions were a betrayal of public trust.
Okay, so that's true. Number two, I do enjoy the, what do you think about his little prima donna Instagram video? And she's like, I'm not even going to comment on that. That's pathetic. But alas, Letitia James does not have a statute of limitations situation here. I will say this, Letitia's actually smart enough to issue her statement via a post or through a mediary so that her legal team can approve it, instead of James Comey, who's like, you know what, I better record an Instagram video, which is just not a smart idea. Letitia James, for the first time in her life, has the smarter of the group's ideas. She issues through a post, quote, I am heartened by today's victory. I hate that. I hate that word. Some words, even though you might be able to use it as a real word, disheartened really should be, you're not heartened by things. All right. Something isn't couth. It's uncouth. Don't be that guy. I am heartened by today's victory and grateful for the prayers and support I have received from around the country. I remain fearless in the face of these baseless charges as I continue fighting for New Yorkers every single day. Congratulations to the New Yorkers. First time ever that they have actually been fought for by Letitia James. That's exciting. That's exciting news there. But in the meantime, it should also be pointed out, baseless charges? No. You committed bank fraud. You committed mortgage fraud. They are on the documents. Again, the pieces of paper, how many times am I going to have this little appeal for knowledge and common sense here? When you sign mortgage documents, they ask you to sign in duplicate and triplicate. And they say, there's this little section that says, I affirm that all of the above information is correct. It is legal. And then they list all of the fancy little US codes that you can be charged with if you got the information wrong. And Letitia just scrawled her little signature over there and now expects, what, nothing at all? Yeah, I'm afraid not.
Well, what I will say is that everybody knows that James Comey lied to Congress. It's as clear as day. And this judge took an unprecedented action to throw these cases out to shield James Comey and Letitia James from accountability based on a technical ruling, and the administration disagrees with that technical ruling. We believe the attorney in this case, Lindsay Halligan, is not only extremely qualified for this position, but she was in fact legally appointed. And I know the Department of Justice will be appealing this in very short order. So maybe James Comey should pump the brakes on his victory lap.
Correct. Whenever there was something like this put forward, wait a second there, Skipper. We got other news to get to. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Every couple of weeks we have an Alex Padilla moment. You say, who is Alex Padilla? Sorry, Senator Jose Tortilla is that one senator from California, right? California, not New Mexico. Yes, California. He's the guy that rushed Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem without ID, without letting anyone know he was there, without anything at all except just him in his suit, and he rushed to the front of the room, and then he got tackled because if you're not wearing identification, not to mention a special little pin, he got in front and said, "I'm the real victim here," and it's because of his own actions. Now, were those actions illegal? No. But if you are in public office, especially if you're in the Senate of the United States, I've confirmed this with a few senators who've appeared on the show. This is something I asked. Like, do they have little training sessions where they tell you things you should and shouldn't do because you have extra status to go places? All of them have said, yes, we absolutely do. Producer Nick, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
I was just going to say his actions were very apropos in football, soccer, taking a flop. He definitely took a flop there. In the original video, it was very much a feigned
He knew what
tackling.
He was doing. Yeah. He knew that he was going to get
It was
tackled.
very much staged.
Right. And the reason that these things are staged is so then the senator can get in front of the country and go, I was killed and murdered, and it's terrible. And they sit there and they cry and that kind of nonsense until finally we move to the next one. The new Alex Padilla moment is all of the Democrat congressmen and women who got their video up where they made the claim, don't disobey illegal orders. The Trump administration is, suggesting some illegal orders. Don't give up the ship. Don't obey illegal orders. And there's a technicality to the content of what they are saying is obviously true. Yeah, don't disobey illegal orders. But to whom are you saying it and with what intent? Believe it or not, there are several laws related to our military in which free speech does not apply. Because the words that you are using can, in fact, based on the motive, give orders or make suggestions to those who are in the service, and you are not allowed to do that. Context matters. And that's why, before we even begin this segment, before we even dig into the latest on this nonsense, the reason that even the late night TV hosts, the Sunday show hosts, will begin their statement with, well, let's look at the context here because it matters. Allow me to explain. It's really not considered a good thing if let's say someone invites their brother who's a soldier over to my home, and I open the door and I go, sorry, the Bill of Rights says I don't have to quarter you, and you slam the door in their face. Yeah, that's not like the point of that particular amendment, quartering troops in peacetime. So in this particular instance, the same kind of context matters here. So that all said, before we even begin, Ruben Gallego, the other senator from Arizona who has a testosterone count of 2.5 and was at least, I believe, Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz at one point. Just judging by his character here, he accidentally over the weekend admitted that this entire thing was a script, just like the Padilla situation. Check this out.
Did you consider, why were you not part of this video?
Yeah, actually, so I was part of the first video. The second video is by the time the script got to me and...
I'm sorry, wait, hold on a second here. Hang on, hold up. Roll that one again.
Why were you not part of this video?
Yeah, actually, so I was part of the first video. The second video is by the time the script got to me and it was in the middle of a lot was going on, I just didn't have time to actually record it, but I'm 100% in alignment with them altogether. This stuff happens. It just happened not to end up being a recording. There's really no other 3D chess to this.
Okay, well, that is There's no 3D. There's no like outside
Who
motive.
sent you the script?
Okay, yeah. So that would be problem number one. There's maybe not 3D chess, but there is actually a little bit of chess here. There's strategy that's taking place, right? The 3D chess is an argument that chess would just be you're playing chess. You are doing something strategically. You're looking ahead. 3D chess, in the colloquial term as we use it in political media, means that you are doing something that appears counter to common sense to accomplish a greater goal. And then 3D, 4D chess, 5D chess. That
3D chess is just chess.
3D, no, it's 2D, right? Because it occurs
2D
on a
is
board.
flat.
2D
so
is
like
flat,
on a computer
right?
screen. And then 3D is just using chess pieces, right?
What would 4D chess involve? Like a Tesseract?
Trump does. Yeah.
Well, then you add in
travel.
Candyland and Hungry Hippos, and it becomes quite a game. Alas, I want to stick on this for a second before we get distracted. The argument that he's making is that there was no grander conspiracy as to why he didn't participate in the video, which was the second draft, by the way, which is also very suspicious. Someone out there provided a script for this whole thing to come down. That's very suspicious indeed, because this means that someone did something with a motive. They didn't just get together like the local knitting circle and go, well, Edith, I think, you know what we'll do? We'll say, don't obey illegal orders. Oh, that's wonderful, Marjorie. No, they didn't do that. It was a very calculated move, which means that the intent absolutely matters. Now, this brings us down to the video itself, of course, we've already played. I want to move away from a particular, we've talked a lot about Kelly and Slotkin. I want to play Representative Goodlander. Representative Goodlander, immediately after the Trump administration came out and said, sedition is illegal. I know, bold statements only. She immediately came out with the Alex Padilla routine. I don't believe in threats.
Know this about me. Threats don't deter me.
Okay.
I will never give up the ship.
Okay.
I love our country and I love our Constitution. That's why I've sworn an oath to protect and defend it many times throughout my life, as an intelligence officer in the United States Navy Reserve, and today as New Hampshire's Congresswoman. Okay,
two quick things here. I have an issue with this. I've had an issue with this kind of stuff for a long time. If you were a naval intelligence officer, nothing that I can see shows that you were actually stationed on a particular ship. What ship are you giving up? This is like someone who worked in logistics their entire life for the Air Force going, all right, we're ready for takeoff. Like from takeoff where? To the local Golden Corral? You're in logistics. Again, people in logistics and training and operations, they are awesome, especially Signal Corps. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Combat engineers, they're phenomenal. But don't get out here and go, we're not going to give up the ship like you're some kind of a SEAL. You weren't manning a gun. Get out of here. Intel officer. Oh, yes, the S2 shop Congresswoman. Yes, in charge of purchasing turquoise blazers. Now we're safe.
In America today, our service members need to know that we've got their back as they honor that sacred oath and as they uphold the basic obligation under federal law to follow lawful orders and lawful orders only.
Okay, so this is a bit of an issue because you are asking enlisted men and women to determine what is and is not a lawful and unlawful order. This is an issue. By the way, we'll skip forward here. Lisa McClain from Michigan makes this perfectly well and very aptly put.
I just want to be precise, Congresswoman. Should members of the U.S. military or the intelligence community, for that matter, obey what are clearly illegal orders if in their mind what they're being told to do is something illegal? Should they still go ahead and follow those rules?
You're asking an enlisted person for their opinion on what they think is legal or illegal. That's a pretty slippery slope. Wouldn't you agree with that?
To be clear, bedroll lawyers are in fact made fun of. No, this is flushed out of troops very early on in basic or boot. No, absolutely. Well, Sergeant, actually, according to U.S. code, shut up. No one asked you. You're a boot. This fomenting insecurity and pause, really, fomenting pause in an active situation is sedition. We'll get to that in a minute. Radio crew, we got to send you over to the commercial break. We'll continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. All right, so I do want to point out rather quickly here, just to get through the rest of these, she made like 5 or 6 more videos. So she said, threats don't deter me. Then she doubles down again because people made fun of her and because she's an idiot.
Simply stating what the law says, what federal law says, that is not sedition.
So fun fact, again, yes, stating the law, it depends on the intent to which you are stating the law. If I, for example, were to go up to someone and bend over their ear and cite the statute on treason, especially the part, in some states still, on being hanged or shot, if I did that long enough and followed them around enough, that would be a form of harassment. The idea that, well, I was just reading the book out loud, no, that doesn't count, sweetheart.
That is not treason. That is my job. I'm a lawmaker, and the law that we are reaffirming is an important one for this country.
Wow, she thinks that the Constitution is important for this country. You get a gold star. That's excellent. Now, when the real catch is to actually clarify the intent of why you felt the need to cause U.S. troops, soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, guardians, apparently, for the Space Force, I guess. If you were going to take those individuals and you were going to make them question orders in a moment of serious import, an active situation, for example, well, then you might as well have some really good illegal orders to make a suggestion of. What illegal orders are you thinking about? She can't name any of them.
What illegal orders are you urging troops to refuse, and what do you hope they take away from your message?
Alex, we love this country. We love our Constitution. It is our job as lawmakers, and especially in this moment, to be clear morally, to be clear legally.
So they didn't. There were no, again, to be clear legally, don't obey anything bad. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's clear. Thank you, Captain Vague.
But not only to make this argument, not only do you have to cite illegal orders that are being put out, you have to cite a list of people that are following illegal orders. What specific service members are they trying to reach that are continuously following illegal orders?
So there's a comment from a guy on the YouTube named Mr. Duck Mallard. Says, quote, hey, remember Jeffrey Epstein and how he and Trump were big buddies? That was funny, huh? Yeah, it is curious how after Trump went ahead and signed the release of those files, how immediately there was a scripted video ready to create a brand new controversy out of nothing.
And simply and clearly stating what the law says, what the Uniform Code of Military Justice says, it's not a crime.
Correct. Yeah, the president of the United States to say sedition is illegal. Yeah, correct. I mean, you want to get out here and play games, we certainly can. Just to, swing us on out here. When you're talking about the situation in the country right now, you want to talk U.S. codes. Yeah, I got some fun U.S. codes for you. Again, it's really not a difficult thing to actually get out there and state a particular series of codes. But they didn't do that. They just said you don't have to disobey, or you don't have to obey illegal or unlawful orders. It's really not going well.
For somebody who's, not afraid, that was a big gulp right there.
Speaking of big gulps, Elisa Slotkin got backed into the same corner from Michigan.
Let's talk right now. Do you believe President...
By the way, here you go. Let's talk the context from each of the news hosts.
President Trump has issued any illegal orders.
To my knowledge, I am not aware of things that are illegal, but certainly there are some legal gymnastics that are going on with these Caribbean strikes and everything related to Venezuela.
Okay, so no. So she said she's bringing up the Caribbean and the Venezuelan strikes. We're going to have to bring the radio crew back from commercial. We're going to park here because that's pretty damning stuff. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Welcome back to Gymnastic Orders on the Tony Kinnett
You're
Cast.
Listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Producer Nick,
May
please.
I offer up? We've been discussing a few of the seditious senators. Good tagline. But I was part of coining Tortilla.
Senator Jose Tortilla, yes?
May I offer Jose Gordito for our friend that received the script a little too late?
Senator Gallego Gordito. I like it. I give it
Jennifer Chalupa.
I give it 15 El Pointos. Excellent Espanol. Okay, so moving on down the line here, Elisa Slotkin makes the suggestion that the illegal orders, the mental gymnastics. Okay, a sitting U.S. senator who is a former CIA officer who prides herself on knowing all of the rules and the laws. Give me a list of committee assignments for Elisa Slotkin.
Oh, pull it up, Jamie.
Producer Nick, if you would, please. I want to double, triple check something here. Elisa Slotkin, supposedly the master of knowing which orders are legal, says there are mental gymnastics and legal super double, triple handstands at the Olympics coming from the Department of War. Well, if you are asking our sailors to determine while on deck whether or not a specific order which has been passed down from flag rank to basic squadron level officers, yeah, I got to tell you, that's a little suspicious here. Yeah, she's on the Armed Services Committee, thank you, and the Veterans Committee, thank you very much, Producer Nick, as well as the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. She can't even name any laws which are unlawful, yet she's trying to foment pause on our sailors in a very active situation in the Caribbean, which we're going to get to. Now, Representative James Crow also has a really rough moment on this. We'll play this real quick.
Let's get to the content of what you had in that video you released, because there are also 15 House Republicans who are also veterans who released a video, including a retired 3-star Marine Corps General, Jack Bergman. Take a listen to this.
Troops, listen up. Any service member who refuses a lawful order is subject to court-martial for violating the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
We study what's lawful and what's not lawful, and the Democrats stunt insinuating that they're illegal or unconstitutional orders. It's downright dangerous.
It is corrosive. It is meant to weaken our country and weaken the military.
How do you respond to these allegations from your colleagues, fellow veterans, that what you have put out there is weakening and corrosive to the military?
I will point out, as one of the comments already has, that as soon as the 3-star started talking, my back immediately went straight up. I was like, oh, wow, a real officer. What a concept.
Unfortunately, are some of Trump's core supporters that are rallying behind the president, and they know better. They know exactly the difference between lawful versus unlawful. We were very clear in the video that what we're talking about is unlawful orders. You have the president's spokesperson going into a press conference this past week and saying that we called for people.
Okay, so he's struggling, he's panicking, and again has no problem disparaging fellow veterans. Oh, these are just Trump supporters. Okay, if you are going to there are two things that really frustrate those who have served. Number one, it is in one statement saying that you are all for veterans and then tossing other veterans under the bus. That's an issue. Number two, it is using your record, your achievements, or the ribbons on one's chest, called a fruit salad. Using your fruit salad to hit someone else. That's also disgusting. And wouldn't you know, Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona is now in some pretty deep stuff over just that. So first of all, what I'm referencing again over on the live stream, I'll go ahead and pull this particular thing up. Senator Mark Kelly released a response to a previous comment from the Department of War. So the Department of War released a statement that said they are receiving serious allegations of misconduct against Captain Mark Kelly, United States Navy, retired in accordance with the Uniform Code of Military Justice, 10 U.S. Code, Section 688, and other applicable regulations, etc., saying, yeah, you have an obligation to obey lawful orders and you are not allowed to instill pause. Well, I have the actual Section 2387 right here. Whoever with intent to interfere with, impair, or influence the loyalty, morale, or discipline of the United States military or naval forces by advising, counseling, urging, or in any manner causes or attempts to cause insubordination, disloyalty, mutiny, or refusal of duty by any member of the military or naval forces of the United States. And then there's the punishment. Shall be fined under this title or imprisoned by not more than 10 years or both, and shall be ineligible for employment by the United States or any department or agency thereof for the next 5 years following conviction. Guys, this is not a difficult one. Context matters. Why did you make the video? What were you trying to do? Who were you talking to? Well, they addressed it to those currently in service. If you receive an officer, or if you receive an order from your officer, from your CO, from your XO, from SART, whatever, and you think it's unlawful, then you stop and you don't do anything. You are asking to get other sailors killed. You are asking to get other soldiers killed. in a high field of fire and action point in an active mission, there is not time to goof around with bedroll lawyers. Now, Secretary Hegseth did come out and say the video made by the, quote, seditious six, clever, was despicable, reckless, and false. And essentially he said then they're reviewing Kelly's comments. He's suspected to be kind of the ringleader here. He wants to be president. That's why Kelly wants to run for president next term. And so Kelly, he fires back. Oh boy, he's ready. He's ready to rock and roll. And so he slaps back with his fruit salad and essentially tells us all about his service. When I was 22 years old, I commissioned as an ensign in the United States Navy, et cetera, posts the fruit salad, the full fruit salad, may I add, with all of his medals drawn, not just the standard ribbon bar on his uniform. But anywho, he mentions that, quote, Secretary Hegseth's tweet is the first I'd heard of this. I also saw the president's post saying I should be arrested, hanged, and put to death. It's all the Alex Padilla fanfare. And a lot of veterans immediately got on this post and called him out, saying, look, no one is disparaging your service, but as soon as you took off the uniform, you never served anyone again but yourself. So where was this during the COVID vaccine era? Where was this during the situation regarding the border? Where was this, again, when individuals' promotions were being upheld for political reasons? Where were any of these statements by the senator from Arizona? Now, speaking of the senator from Arizona, Ruben Gallego also came out to tell Secretary Hegseth that he's not having it. I'm starting to realize why they didn't want Ruben Gallego in the original video. It's
Hey, this is Ruben Gallego. I'm traveling through Arizona right now, and I just received the news that the Department of Defense is starting an investigation against my seatmate, Mark Kelly. This is insane. We should all point out how insane this is. And, you know, these guys are trying to say that they're not acting like fascists. They're not trying to give as much power to this president as a king, and they should stop acting like it. Mark Kelly's a patriot. There's no reason why they're going after him. He was doing his duty and just reminding people about their rights as service members. And, you know, Secretary Hegseth, all these guys, you guys, you're not going to be able to scare us. We have a right to defend the Constitution of the United States. We have a right to tell other service members that they have a right to ignore illegal orders.
Okay, thank you. That's real special. No, whatever you think is going to happen on the offset of this, the general media political class has a different idea of what the illegal orders could be. As much as I am loath to play you these clips, this is half of the Democrat demographic they're aiming for now is old, angry women. So The View, Joy Behar, this is what she thinks the illegal orders are, because they have to, I don't know if they're really flexible enough to do gymnastics anymore. So we'll just have to say this is a good attempt.
When he threatens to, Trump threatens to deploy active duty military to quell protests, that is against the First Amendment. Protests are covered by the First Amendment.
Oh dear sweet goodness. Why? When he says he's going to deploy active military, the First Amendment says that you don't have to protest on
protesting. Peaceful protesting. That's one particular thing.
Sonny Hawson's trying to cut her off because she's that stupid.
I have no problem with this whatsoever. I
love it. I love it. Yes, excellent. Please run with this. Run with this and reveal how little the rest of you know about the Uniform Code of Military Justice, of how these particular things are supposed to go, about what we have JAGs for. By all means, keep it up. So on that side of things, let's get to the other really stupid nonsense from the media today. The New York Times has released a beautiful story of what they call two men. Two men, one identity. They both paid the price. And it's a picture of this white dude in a quarter zip, which, by the way, those are apparently coming back in style. Let's go. You can shake your head if you want. The millennial in me
golf, but nowhere else
is thrilled. And then a Hispanic-looking dude. And they're both looking off to the horizon wistfully. How exciting. Thousands of undocumented workers rely on fraudulent Social Security numbers. One of them belonged to Dan Kluver. Now,
I can't tell which is which. Which one's Dan?
I'm just going to offer a little bit of advice here. Doing the Kilmore Abrego Garcia argument again, you've heard of Maryland, man. Now get ready for Guatemala, Minnesota anchor baby dude. Yeah. All right, here's the real story here. The New York Times tries to make the case that an illegal alien from Guatemala who stole his identity so he could work in the United States, he bought an illegal, stolen, identity theft procured social security number and information. He purchased knowingly another individual's identity. And he, somebody with 3 prior deportations, multiple arrests for a DUI, 4 different anchor babies, and of course, once in a car accident that killed a 68-year-old man. This guy, the New York Times is saying, is just as much a victim as Dan Kluver, who had his identity stolen, and then, because you are linked to the actions under your social security number, then had to pay thousands of dollars to the IRS and other agencies because of discrepancies that were caused by the illegal immigrant. How does the New York Times phrase this? Quote, "The first years were lonely and exhausting for the illegal. He started to drink, which led to a string of DUIs and other minor offenses." Oh, no, you don't. No, you do not get to do that. Drinking, well, he was so lonely and sad, he started drinking, and that led to driving drunk. Absolutely not. Screw you. Screw you, New York Times. No one who drinks accidentally finds their way into drunk driving. Screw you. Again, there is a 68-year-old man who is dead because of his drunk driving. He was deported back to Guatemala in 2005, in 2008, in 2009. Hey, Nick, who was the president of the United States in 2009? Just real quick for us here.
I'm going to go with Obama.
That's correct. Then, when he returned to the United States and purchased a new ID for work. Oh, they're just selling them at the gift shop. Oh, got one with a Happy Meal. Come on. This is ridiculous. Ridiculous. He sought out documents from a black market seller. He wasn't just approached that, "Hey there, SA, you want some documents and IDs I got right here? You look like a man who could use a new face, Holmes." No, he didn't get that. He sought them out. And the New York Times is making the suggestion that, well, they're just 2 peas in a pod. Who knows?
The system failed them both, Tony.
Oh, beautiful. Radio crew, we got to send y'all to commercial. We'll bring you back in a second. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. All right. Well, in the meantime, there are also some Republicans who are suggesting that the number one answer for fixing the labor problems of the United States is that we just need to import tons of immigrants as fast as we can from everywhere, because after all of those lazy white people, they won't take the jobs. So we're going to bring in people who are willing to take those jobs. It's strangely similar to the argument the left uses for slave labor through crop picking and hotel management and the service industry, etc., which is very, very demeaning to people who went through the process to come here legally and, may I say, assimilated. Because there is a large portion right now on the left and the right which are making the case that assimilation doesn't matter. What we really need to do is import a lot of people over here because the economy is going to collapse if they don't. No, when there is pressure applied from a labor perspective or a supply and demand perspective, that is a lever to change the economy of the United States. If there are not enough people going into certain positions, this is also one of the ways that the industry changes. It is not just supply and demand of the product, it is also supply and demand of the labor. One of the reasons the United States started incorporating robotics into automotive industries was not to screw over the people at the factory. Quit listening to Bernie Sanders and his really stupid rhetoric that he came up with in the Texas bathroom stall. Stop that. The reason that we come up with innovations is to, in fact, make things easier for those who labor in the United States, just as much as cost-cutting measures. I will remind you guys that some of the ergonomic and work-related improvements to American society over the last couple of centuries were not just to put dollar bills in Monopoly Man's pocket. That's not what the data shows. And that kind of pseudo-socialist argument coming from the free market right, saying, oh, well, I came from India and everyone there is really wonderful. So really what we need to do is just an open visa hole for people from India and people from the Central and South American places. Do you know who are the two groups in the United States who are the most against relaxing immigration standards from India and from Central and South American countries? That would be legal immigrants from India and people from Central and South American countries. They say a high standard is necessary because I escaped a lot of the riffraff to come here and assimilate. And removing language requirements and culture requirements for the United States is really gross. And by the way, the American Enterprise Institute has a couple of excellent points on this matter in general that I do want to point out. Quote, the U.S. has a welfare state. This means that those individuals who are below the 60th percentile or so of the income distribution are net receivers of funds from the government during their lifetime. Those between the 60th and 90th percentile are approximately net zero contributors. Only the top 10 percentiles of those participating in the tax and income system of this country are providing more to this country than they are taking in. So maybe bringing people in to fulfill jobs, whether they're working in convenience stores and gas stations or farming, percentiles kind of matter here. We got to bring the radio crew back one more time. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
All right, very, very quickly here. A little bit of the good, the bad, and the awkward for today. There is a series of foreign reports that have everyone losing their marbles. So the President of the United States has sent Secretary of State Marco Rubio over to Eastern Europe to begin a series of negotiations on another series of peace talks with Russia and Ukraine. And the deal has a lot of people very, very, very upset. So first of all, it requires the Russians to confirm Ukraine's sovereignty. That would be a first. It would also create a basically all debts paid maneuver. Quote, all ambiguities of the last 30 years would be considered settled, end quote. Number 3 is kind of funny. It's expected that Russia will not invade neighboring countries and that NATO will not expand further. So essentially a freeze or a moratorium. And then a series of things that are very, very, very pro-Russia. They get a lot of land. They also get what appear to be some explicit pro-Russian sentiment in the way that certain territories on the eastern portion of Ukraine are set up still related to Ukraine so that they won't try to limit Russian representation in those regions for like a future Anschluss situation. And this is portrayed by the Ruskies as saying that Ukraine is going to eliminate any kind of Nazi ideology, which essentially means anything in the Ukrainian government or culture that is to the right of Mao. So really weird stuff there. And then also, NATO agrees not to station troops in Ukraine, but if Russia ever moves to the west again, then the United States will include high-form military strikes and full military involvement as an option. You have a lot of people getting out there and saying that this is the best thing in the world, it's the worst thing in the world, Trump's a hero, Trump's the devil.
Is this your final offer to Ukraine?
No, not my final. No, we'd like to get the peace. It should have happened a long time ago. The Ukraine war with Russia should have never happened. If I were president, it never would have happened. We're trying to get it ended. One way or the other, we have to get it ended. So
the President of the United States has not decided on a particular series of peace plans that he wants yet. What it appears, now looking at the document, he has pulled direct proposal points from Zelensky's administration in Ukraine and the Putin administration in Russia and glued them together. Now, you know who's really upset about this? The Europeans. Who cares? Who cares? I care about 4 countries in this particular instance. I care about Russia. I care about Ukraine. I care about the United States. And I care about Poland. Now, if Poland doesn't like the terms, okay, yeah, I'm interested in hearing what the Polish have to say about it. I really am. Because they're the ones who are going to have to deal with this stuff first. As for the Russians and the Ukrainians, the United States has opted to play a third-party arbiter. So everyone who wants the United States, who wants Trump to come in and go, I tell you what, Putin, I'm going to give you 2 birds right here. It's not going to end the war. It'll be a proxy war that lasts for another 10 years. Trump doesn't want that. So what I've seen on the right and on the left in the country today is a lot of individuals who want to get out there and posture on yet another half-baked good. And some are saying, oh, this is terribly unseasoned. And the others are saying, oh, this is going to be a terrible product when it's finished. It's not done baking, Jeeves. Cool thine slacks for just a moment. Now, before we get to the rest of the news, I want to say a nice fond sayonara to the radio crew this evening. You guys should head over to youtube.com or rumble.com and check out the Daily Signal stuff over there. We'll catch you guys tomorrow. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. We're going to continue for a little bit longer on the live stream. All right, let's talk about a series of actions that really do matter. By the way, in case you're wondering why I'm kind of ending things, right now you have McConnell griping with J.D. Vance. You have Vance griping back at Senator McConnell's office. Ukraine, by the way, has launched a series of drone strikes on Crimea. There's a lot of stuff going on. Again, it's not done baking. Hang on a second, armchair quarterbacks. Give it a moment. Let's talk about Venezuela, because right now, the United States is flying B-52s escorted by F-18s off the Venezuelan coast, essentially about 25 to 30 miles north of Caracas. And additionally, there is news that U.S. officials believe that Cuba may execute Nicolas Maduro if he attempts to flee the country. So Maduro is rather between a rock and a hard place. He's got Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to the left of him. He's just got like a solid brick wall to the right. He ain't going anywhere. And the reason that the Cubans might be getting involved here, if the Venezuelan government falls, if there are elections, if there is a coup, the Venezuelan government is too unstable, and it really leaves Cuba all alone in the Caribbean, which that government's not very stable to begin with right now. The half of the U.S. Navy is currently in the Southern Caribbean. And this has some people very, very upset. Rand Paul is very, very big mad about the situation in Venezuela. So here's Rand Paul going full libertarian on, again, the opposite of an endless war situation is, again, operating in the Western Hemisphere. First time that's happened in a while. Here's Rand Paul upset.
I want to ask you, because of your position on Homeland Security, you may have some insight into the drug cartels. You are also on Senate Foreign Relations, and it is tomorrow that the Trump administration officially will designate the Cartel de los Soles as a foreign terrorist organization. That's the cartel the Trump administration says is linked to Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. Secretary Hegseth says it gives the administration new tools. Nothing's on or off the table, he says, militarily. Legally, what changes tomorrow? What becomes possible?
I think by doing this, they're pretending as if we are at war. They're pretending as if they've gotten some imprimatur to do what they want. When you have war, the rules of engagement are lessened. So, for example, we normally don't shoot boats that we suspect of being drug dealers. In fact, if the Coast Guard tomorrow started shooting all vessels that are off of Miami or off of San Diego,
making up silly, goofy hypotheticals, the libertarians' bread and butter. Imagine tomorrow if we just started stabbing people. Would that be good? Okay, ma'am, relax. What are you talking about? The United States has its satellites, its cameras, its entire intelligence apparatus pointed at the number one foreign threat that the Trump administration believes is operating in the United States. By the way, how do I know? Forget it. I'm getting up for a second from the microphone. Tired of this nonsense. Where is this? There it is. At the Defense Summit I was just at in Fort Wayne, I was speaking with individuals who are in the middle of a major drone mapping operation in the Caribbean, in the Gulf of America. The United States has every single camera lens, every piece of radar equipment, every buoy, every pair of binoculars pointed at the Caribbean, pointed off the coast of South America, both the Eastern Pacific and the Western and Gulf of America Atlantic. And it matters because when Rand Paul gets out here and says, we have no idea what's in those boats, it could just be Mama Bear out there out for a fishing trip. You are stupid. You are stupid for suggesting that. You are an idiot if you believe that the United States is throwing in a very, very expensive series of JDAM strikes, kinetic strikes, from U.S. battle groups in the Southern Caribbean to shoot a couple of fishermen. We can see the fishing rods on the boats. We can see the kind of outboard motors on the boats. Guess what? If someone's out to go fishing and there's no live well in the boat, there are no buckets in the boat, they're not actually going out there to fish.
About 1 in 4 of the vessels that they normally board doesn't have drugs. So it actually would be unlawful if the Coast Guard started blowing up boats. But for some reason, they say, oh, we're at war off the coast of Venezuela.
The case that he makes is he says, I want to make sure that I get this right. He makes the claim that the United States is treating foreign gangs as enemy armies. We're going to play semantics. Really? Oh man, the president is treating a foreign group of men operating to undermine the United States and kill American citizens and permanently enslave them financially to traffic women and children, both outside of the United States and inside the United States. He's treating that like a foreign military who would operate against the United States and kill Americans and likely commit the atrocities that occupational armies do. You know, the same occupational armies that, for example, took over apartment buildings like in Aurora, Colorado, producer Nick.
I think he wants us to forget his rhetoric surrounding the airstrikes that were conducted under the Obama administration. He thinks we really have that short of a memory. We remember you defending airstrikes under Obama. We remember this. People don't forget as easily as you think.
You know, the audience doesn't know necessarily, but you know why this bothers me so much. We have entire groups of people who are trained at a moment's notice to identify things from a very high altitude in the various means that we have to look at things through different filters. We know. The argument that is being made is so silly. Robert Greenway of the Heritage Foundation makes a far better argument, and it does, in fact, lower my blood pressure to hear a coherent and literate point echoed on the airwaves.
I'd make 3 points. First is that the United States is serious about Western Hemisphere security. This administration is putting the resources behind it. 1/3 of our deployed naval assets now in the Western Hemisphere, and all pointed at the central focal point for not just narco trafficking in the Maduro regime's support for it, but also for Chinese and, frankly, for Russian and Iranian presence in the hemisphere threatening the United States and our interests. So the nexus in many ways behind the threats that the United States faces sits in Maduro's presence in Venezuela, and now a commitment of resources to be able to shift that, hopefully, in our favor. And I suspect that's what you're seeing the administration do now.
Correct. I mean, but when it comes to, the Heritage Foundation, foreign scholars, whether it's Victoria Coates, whether it's, of course, Robert Greenway, that common sense is, in fact, rather common. Now, this brings us over to another foreign policy move from the administration. The President of the United States is officially designating multiple chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood, including the Egyptian branch, which is the progenitor of what Sebastian Gorka calls the modern jihadists, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hamas. Those are now to be declared foreign terrorist organizations. I cannot wait for the day when those who are operating in the Council of American Islamic Relations, otherwise known as CAIR, are just rotely kicked out of the country. Just get out orders by 5 p.m. this afternoon. Can't wait.
But who's going to fund Mamdani's campaign then?
Well, no one's funding Mamdani's campaign at the moment. The transitionary period, he's out once again asking people, he said, the leaves, they're crisp.
He's not repaying his debt.
The fall is cool. Donate money to me or you're a fool. He's out here getting limerick with it. Incredible. So there are some individuals who are very pro-Islamic, including those who are just anti-Israel, who have recently been confirmed to be assets of other countries since Elon Musk's team over on Twitter X has now started showing the country of origin of certain accounts, including if you're using a VPN to pretend to be in the United States. And it turns out a lot of these particular accounts who claim to be white, blonde Americans with big boobs are like Jahil from Islamabad, and Bahir from New Delhi, and that one guy who calls from customer support, who's writing, for the incredible account, American Patriot 1776. Those particular crews, who are in fact funded by the Muslim Brotherhood and other radical Muslim jihadists in the United States and abroad, I have no sympathy for you. I have no sympathy at all. And by the way, if you are a Christian who thinks that you have totally more in common with these radical Muslims than, I don't know, what's the conspiracy angle today? The Jews? You're stupid. And by the way, according to the polling yet still, as many in my audience know, the vast majority of Americans never bought into the Muslim Brotherhood nonsense, never bought in to the Islamic terror-backed networks operating in the United States. The vast majority of people in the United States, according to every piece of polling data that we have that confirms a real person is on the other end and that they are American, confirms that the vast majority of Americans, it's like 100% of the right, if you really look at it, have nothing to do with the Islamic radical nonsense that's constantly being perpetuated. So, by the way, and the reason I say this because people say, what about Candace Owens? She has a very popular podcast, and she thinks that the Jews are bad and Muslims are good and all of this thing. Not only do we have data on the social media accounts who are from other countries, as someone who has spoken quite at length to individuals on the inside of Rhetoric, of Apple Podcasts, of Spotify, as well as Megaphone, Spotify's podcasting partner, and who's the last one? The last individual group. It's like Castwall or something. Let me look through my emails here because we were chatting about this. Castbox. The internal data, which podcasters hide and keep very, very close to the chest, shows that individuals like Candace Owens have less than 20% of their audience share coming from the United States. And some of them, because their vendors brag about writing bot network and SIM card spoofing programs from Shenzhen, China, and New Delhi. Well, it just so happens that they brag about coding those particular things for you when they're trying to make a sale to me. And they show me the proof that they made it, because it's really curious how some of your podcasting networks that are very, very legitimate, no marketing, no money spent on your marketing, wink, just so happen to come like 5,000 listens in 5-minute increments on the dot, like 5 minute 00 seconds, 00 milliseconds, come from China, India, Pakistan, Egypt. So congratulations. Really proud of you being able to purchase listeners to your insane rants. Producer Nick.
You're telling me there's not a huge grassroots fan base for Candace Owens in Guangdong province of China?
I'll say this. There's a larger number. So 15, 20 years ago, there was a considered the voting base of the right needed to win every time. It had to be values aligned with were evangelicals in the United States and conservative Catholics. Conservative Catholics and evangelicals, from foreign policy to pro-life policy to anti-crime policy, were considered the bedrock of American Christianity. And some of the more liberal Protestants and the kind of in-name only Catholics of the left had a very small contingent the left tried to hold on to. And it, you've seen those goobers that are all out in rainbow robes and whatever. No, that doesn't count. Well, there's a large group online that is trying to tell you that all of a sudden those conservative Catholics and evangelicals in the United States have just disappeared. They don't exist anymore. That's not true. Case in point is Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene came out with the big, I'm resigning, I'm not going to be a battered wife. Incredibly insulting to those who've gone through domestic abuse. But anywho, I'm resigning because Israel's got the United States in a vice grip and I'm not going to stand with this. Her approval rating in her own district is less than 20%. In Georgia.
Going on The View didn't fix that?
Oh, amazed. So the moral of the story here, the story of the Maury, the idea that the left was going to be able to artificially prop up jihad on the right as the approval, no. Americans are far too smart to just be told, well, actually, Sharia law, what even is that? Okay, that's super duper. Last but not least, the AI bubble that's going to kill us all. There's so much gloom and dooming that is constant. Is the economy going to fall apart? Are we all dying?
Skynet's here.
The AI bubble, it's happening. And there's this argument that is being made that all of these companies on social media, all of these AI companies, they're investing in each other in a cyclical pattern, and it's all fraudulent, and they all know it, and we're all going to collapse and die. Okay, a couple of things can be true at once here. Number one, yes, there are some cyclical patterns of investing. Microsoft will invest in CoreWeave, which is also invested in by NVIDIA and Intel, because CoreWeave provides certain kinds of infrastructure that any kind of a data center operates on. Now, NVIDIA receives an investment from Oracle, who will then invest some of its funds in OpenAI. OpenAI also invests in Oracle. The reason OpenAI is investing in Oracle is because Oracle needs AI analyzing of the lines of code that it's creating. Some of the circular funding makes a lot of sense because let's say for just a minute that I run a trucking company and I would reach out to Perfect Circle, the inventors of the cruise control. I would invest some money in them, and then they would send cruise control devices to me through any of their various manufacturers. And then I would invest in a third company who makes parts that would then be sold to the cruise control company. Technically, you can say that's a cyclical pattern of investing. Not always a bad thing. It's a bad thing when it's just the handing back and forth of dollars, which is happening in a way. For example, the Mistral AI model and NVIDIA are swapping money back and forth. This is not the 2000s dot-com bubble burst, though. It's not, and here's why. Number one, during the 2000 dot-com bubble, the majority of internet companies were pre-revenue with no clear monetization strategy. Essentially, you had a guy that came into the room and said, hey, I got an idea. What about a website, but it's pictures, and it's pictures of the moon. Website moon.com, .moon. It's going to be great. And lemons. And they pitched that idea, and some stupid investor said, wow, the internet, that's incredible. I have pictures of the moon. And they invested money. There was no plan, there was no graphs, there were no charts. That's not the day and age anymore. There are a lot of AI startups. A lot of them don't make it. They are not receiving the kinds of investment that there were being invested back during the dot-com bubble burst. Now, number two, very, very important here. I promise we're not going to belabor this, but this is the most important. Guys, the primary funding source for AI right now is a massive free cash flow from the advertising and cloud spend via technology megacorporations. What that means is those who already have financial skin in the game are self-investing. The Warren Buffett investing a part of your own profits. There are a lot of people in development of AI that believe they can reach this magical crest of a moment where we can make AI self-generating, where it can remember tons of lines of code with ever having to reset, that kind of a thing. The entire market is not dependent on that. If AI, we reach kind of a roof, like a level, there's not going to be a huge market collapse like the 2000 dot-com bubble burst. Will there be a slump? Absolutely, there'll be a slump. But the argument that we're all going to fall apart and die and it'll be horrible, incredible, whatever, no, I'm afraid not. Number two, the United States is, well, I should say, number three, the United States is pushing, as of November 24th, that being today, a Manhattan Project-style initiative called the Genesis Mission. It's a federal initiative to harness AI for accelerating scientific discovery and innovation. Now, essentially what this means is that the government is saying, okay, all right, we see all of this potential for AI. We're going to point it at some research patterns so that there is less likely to be a consumer demand that makes or breaks the entire industry. It's a breaker. This creates not an endless chain of the snake eating itself, as is being proclaimed facetiously or just straight out incorrectly by a lot of those in financial media. But essentially, it's creating a kind of NASA-like focus at a goal. Maybe we'll reach the moon. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll be able to carry intercontinental ballistic missiles with it. Maybe we won't. But we're going to point funding at this in this direction, seeking an aim. There's no market load bearing on this. You are going to be just as fine tomorrow if NVIDIA, I don't know how many of you out there, do you guys out there have a ton of stock in your own private portfolios in NVIDIA and these other tech firms? The S&P 500 International Republic was replaced on the S&P 500 with SanDisk today. That's a storage company. Do you have a ton of money in that particular group? American manufacturing doesn't. The service industry doesn't. Most people out there like you don't. If you have mutual funds, they're not investing all of their diverse groups into AI. Again, it wouldn't be great if the market bellied up on AI, but it's not going to be the end all be all. All right, those things said, I do, right before we finish for the evening, I really do want to thank the crew over at Rumble, who has done a phenomenal job with Rumble Studio, partnering with providing us some excellent restreaming opportunities, far better than rumble.io. And so with that particular situation in play here, I do want to point out that since you've probably noticed, Rumble is growing fast. It's not slowing down. They're building a real alternative to big tech, these groups that are circling all of their funding into each other consistently by putting instead creators first and protecting free speech, the people I like, the people I don't like, the people I love, and the people I can't stand. Rumble is not saying who can and who can't participate on the platform. That I appreciate from a First Amendment perspective. That's the actual First Amendment there, Ruben Gallego. Here's why I'm saying this. Now there's Rumble Premium. It's an easy way to upgrade your experience with Premium. You get ad-free viewing across the platform, no ads, no pre-rolls, no interruptions, just the content that you came for. Plus, Premium members unlock exclusive content like bonus videos, behind-the-scene drops, and more from your favorite creators. Right now, Rumble is offering $10 off an annual subscription. You just go to rumble.com/premium and use the promo code STUDIO. That's STUDIO. Rumble Studio is what we're using to rebroadcast the show. You use that code at checkout, STUDIO, STUDIO, rumble.com/premium, and you get $10 off your annual subscription. No more ads, more freedom, and content that you actually care about. That's the deal. So thanks very much to the Rumble crew for doing a phenomenal job of making sure that our show is rebroadcasted. We have a ton of stuff in the next couple of days. I know it's Thanksgiving week, which reminds me, those who like the Daily Signal's Top News in 10, there's no Top News in 10 this week. So instead, you've got this phenomenal Tony Kinnett cast crew to get you through the week. And that way we can enjoy all of that good Thanksgiving break while getting a little bit of rest ourselves here at the TK crew, while also trying to make sure we keep you up to date on all of the news. So those things all said, really appreciate those stopping by tonight. We'll be back tomorrow. We're sticking around. We got more news to cover, more great stuff. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.